Amara stood frozen in the middle of her bedroom, staring at the message on Daniel's phone. Her hands were shaking, her lips were trembling, and then she saw the photographs, hotel rooms, secret kisses. Amara couldn't believe that while she was fighting for her life, her husband had chosen to betray her. Then she saw a message that completely shattered her world. This is African Folktales with Nsinem. Listen to Amara's chilling story. But to understand how she got here, we have to go back to the night she almost lost her life.
Amara, look at your father. Move it again. Show them. Nobody believed him. Then, right before their eyes, Amara's hand closed weakly around her father's thumb. Her chest let out a sharp, ragged gasp. The nurse screamed, dropping her clipboard. "She's breathing! She's alive! Doctors, come quickly!" Chaos broke loose. Doctors ran out with oxygen tanks, surrounding the gurney. The machines beeped back to life. Amara opened her eyes, locking onto her father's weeping face. She had broken through the gates of the grave, besties. She was alive. But during treatment, she slipped into a coma. For 4 weeks, her family prayed and waited, the way only a Nigerian family can pray, with fasting and vigils and aunties calling every pastor they'd ever met. Then, one day, she opened her eyes, her vision swimming through a fog of medication. She saw her mother, Mama Grace. "Mommy," Amara whispered. Mama Grace jolted awake, bursting into tears. "Amara! Oh my God, my child is back!"
As she slowly recovered, Amara asked the question everyone knew was coming. "Mommy, where is my baby boy? Bring him to me." A heavy silence dropped over the room. No one could look her in the eye. "Mommy, where is my baby?" Mama Grace broke completely. "He is gone, Amara. The baby didn't make it out of the theater alive." Amara let out a breathless gasp, her head slamming back against the pillow. "No, it's a lie. God didn't bring me this far to mock me." But before she could even process it, the doctor delivered the final blow. "Mrs. Daniel, the hemorrhage was catastrophic. We had to perform an emergency hysterectomy. Your womb was removed." The room went dead silent. Her baby was gone. And so was the possibility of ever carrying another child. In less than a minute, her whole existence was stripped bare. Her world didn't just end, it turned to ash. Amara remained in the ward for 3 agonizing months. When she finally returned home, she was a ghost of herself, needing help with everything. Seeing her state, Mama Grace suggested Nneka move in to nurse her. Amara only nodded weakly. "Okay, Mommy, let her come." And Nneka moved in the very next day, her suitcases rolling across the marble floors. And within a week, she had made herself indispensable. The kind of indispensable a person makes herself when there's something in it for her too, though. Nobody suspected that yet. She bathed Amara, massaged her swollen legs with lavender oil, quietly ran the whole household. On the nights the grief became too heavy, Nneka would hold her. "It's okay, sister. I am here. I am always going to be here for you." Amara wept into her neck. "I feel so empty, Nneka. I feel lost." "Shh, don't say that," Nneka murmured, her eyes staring past Amara's shoulder at the gold-framed mirror on the wall. "I'm here to fill the spaces for you." But while Amara mourned in one room, she had no idea that her world was about to implode. Daniel changed after the hospital. What began as Nneka managing his home and his wife's care, slowly, quietly became something more. Shared stress, shared grief. Nobody noticed when the lines blurred, when care became comfort,
and comfort became something else entirely.
That is how the devil operates, besties. He does not knock, he simply moves in with the luggage. 1 year later, Amara stood folding Daniel's shirts, unaware her whole life was about to turn upside down. Then his phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was a message from Nike. Why was her cousin messaging her husband at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday? A second message flashed beneath the first. I took the test, Daniel. It's positive. I think I'm pregnant. Amara's hands shook so violently, the shirt slipped from her grip. She picked up the phone. She typed in his passcode, her own birthday, still, after everything. And the chat opened. And chai! The world dissolved. It wasn't just one message. It was a library of devastation. Photos, hotel videos, 9 months of betrayal while she slept upstairs under sedatives. Then the final exchange from that very morning. Neka, I took the test, Daniel. It's positive. I think I'm pregnant. Daniel, thank God. Pray the Lord. Finally my own child, my biological heir in this house. The phone slipped from her numb fingers. No, not Neka, not my own blood. The bathroom door clicked open. Daniel stepped out, humming a hymn, a towel round his neck, and the melody died the instant he saw her face and the phone on the floor. Neka? Amara's voice was a broken sliver of glass. Silence. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. And that somehow hurt worse than any lie. You got my cousin pregnant. You got my own sister pregnant. He straightened his spine, calm as stone. Yes, one word. Complete destruction.
Amara lost her mind. She lunged at him and gave him a hot slap. The sound echoed off the walls. You monster! You devil in human form! He caught her wrists like iron cuffs. Stop this madness, Amara. How could you do this? In my own house, with my own blood. He shoved her back onto the bed, smoothing his clothes, his voice flat and detached. Because real cruelty never shouts, it explains. I deserve a child, Amara. I am a man of standing. I cannot spend my life in an empty house because your womb failed you. God has provided an alternative. Then came the click of heels at the door. If you are explaining the situation, Daniel, she should hear the whole truth from the source. Standing in the doorway was Neka. No bump yet, just a loose gown and a chin tilted up like she owned the whole compound, plus the street outside.
She looked at Amara and whispered, "Don't look at him like that, big sister. At least one woman in this house can give him what he needs. At least my body isn't a graveyard." Silence swallowed the room like a rising tide, and something in Amara died right there. Then the shaking started. Not weak victim trembling, but the tectonic kind, grief superheating into rage. She walked toward Nika, slow, precise. Nika didn't flinch. "What? Look at me now." "How long?" Amara asked, unnaturally calm. "How long what?" "How long have you been sleeping with my husband under my roof?" Daniel tried to interject. "Amara, please, let us handle this with maturity." "Shut your mouth!" The scream tore through the ceiling. "I did not ask you, Daniel." "Neke, how long?" Neke shrugged. "Almost a year." A year. While Amara was learning to walk again. While Neke bathed her, massaged her, prayed with her, called her sister. The two of them were slipping into guest rooms, laughing at her stupidity, building a new life on the ashes of her old one. "You held me while I screamed, Neke. You wiped the sweat off my forehead." Neke's face twisted. "Don't act like the innocent victim. Do you know what it's like living inside your shadow your whole life? Auntie Grace adored you. Uncle Emeka praised you. Every room we walked into, it was always Amara this, Amara that. And me, what was I to anyone?" "You were family, Neka. We loved you." "No! I was the pathetic orphan cousin your family took in out of pity. I wore your hand-me-downs. I ate your leftovers." Her voice cracked. "The world always chose you first. Daniel was the most eligible man in our circle. You got the ring, the house, the prestige. Then the confession underneath all of it. For once in my miserable life, I wanted something that belonged to you. I wanted to know what it felt like to be preferred over the great Amara. It wasn't love. It wasn't even really about Daniel. It was decades of buried envy finally finding its outlet. So this is your revenge, Amara whispered. Nneka smiled coldly, hand resting on her still flat stomach. No, big sister, this is my victory. That word did it. Amara gave Nneka a hot slap. The slap sent Nneka staggering into the vanity table, perfume bottles crashing to the floor. Amara, she's pregnant! Daniel lunged forward. Don't you dare touch me! She shoved him back with a strength she didn't know she had.
Her voice went cold and final. Get out, both of you. Get out of my house before I burn it down with you inside it. Bessies, before we continue, I need to ask you something. If you were Amara, would you ever forgive Nneka for betraying you like this? Or is this the kind of betrayal that can never be forgiven? Tell me what you think in the comments, because I want to hear from you. The divorce moved with terrifying mechanical speed, as if the papers had been drafted long before the phone was ever found. No apology from Daniel, no remorse from the cousin she'd loved like a sister. Just a clean, silent ending that broke her worse than the hospital had. This time, the damage was total. She stopped trusting anyone, even her own judgment. If I could call a snake my sister for a year and not know it, she thought, then my instincts are broken.
4 years passed in isolation. Any man who showed interest, she ran from, because behind her walls lived one question that never let her sleep. How do you tell a man you can never give him a child, that you can never give him a legacy? So she built the walls higher, stone by stone. One rainy Saturday, Papa Emeka came to see her in her small apartment in Surulere. He sat beside her a long while, saying nothing, just the storm drumming outside. Amara, there's something I've kept from you. I wanted you to heal first. What is it, Daddy? It's about Daniel, her father said. That chapter is closed. I don't want to hear his name, Amara stated. The day you first brought that boy to the village, my spirit rejected him. So before your wedding, I hired an investigator. I sent him to the town where Daniel had lived with his first wife. Amara froze. The one who died from stomach pain. That story was a lie, Amara. A lie to protect his name in the church. Papa Emeka's eyes filled with tears. Before the wedding, the investigator wasn't able to find anything. So I thought I had been wrong about Daniel. But months before you gave birth, the investigator called me with the truth. Papa Emeka lowered his head. I sat on it, telling myself it wasn't my place to interfere in a marriage you had already chosen. I thought I could protect you from a distance. I was wrong. The room began to spin. Amara looked at her father as tears filled her eyes.
His first wife didn't die from stomach pain, Papa Emeka continued. She died giving birth in the house of a traditional midwife. She had obstructed labor. The baby was too big for her pelvis. Amara's breath caught. It was Daniel who insisted on a home birth. He told her the same thing he told you, that hospitals were for people with weak faith, that true believers trusted God, not doctors who were playing God. Papa Emeka's voice cracked. When the bleeding persisted, the midwife called a nurse. He looked at Amara, tears streaming down his face. But it was too late.
Amara's mind went back to that terrible night. The doctor, the clipboard, Daniel's calm, arrogant smile. No, we do not do operations in my family. He knew what would happen, Amara. He had already done it once. He let that poor girl bleed to death to prove his spirituality to his church. And I knew, before you ever went into that labor room, I knew, and I said nothing. Amara broke completely, collapsing to her knees. Dad, you could have saved me. You could have saved my son from dying. Papa Emeka wept, holding her. I should have forbidden it. I told myself it wasn't my place anymore. I was wrong, my child. I was wrong. The truth had finally been dug up from its grave. Daniel wasn't a man of weak faith. He was a predator, hiding behind scripture. And the one man Amara had trusted without question her whole life had known and stayed silent.
She cried for hours on that floor, not just for her marriage or Nneka's betrayal or her father's silence, but for the naive girl she used to be. But as Amara cried, she had no idea her cousin Nneka was dancing into something she would regret. Besties, I need to know your thoughts on this one. Papa Emeka knew what Daniel had done to his first wife and still allowed Amara to marry him. Was Papa Emeka also responsible for what happened to Amara? Should he have stopped the marriage no matter what? Tell me honestly in the comments. And a very special shout out to Camille from Trinidad. Thank you so much for watching and supporting African Folktales with Nsinem. Sending you lots of love all the way to Trinidad. 4 years later, Lagos is a fierce machine, but Amara had learned to move through it with flawless precision. At 42, she was stronger, quieter, impeccably polished, her professional authority worn like armor, the kind no husband, cousin, or gossiping auntie could pierce.
She'd risen to senior operations manager at one of the fastest growing design firms on Lagos Island. Work was safe. Work didn't look you in the eye and lie for a year. Work didn't slip into bed with your cousin. Nobody at the firm knew her history. Not the scar beneath her trousers, not the silence waiting in her flat every evening. She had mastered survival. But survival is not healing. Survival is just holding your breath underwater so you don't drown. At exactly 10 a.m., the heavy mahogany doors of the boardroom clicked open.
And besties, the man that walked in looked like money, like class, like a man who had never once rushed for anybody. Tall, broad shoulders. He didn't strut in like the usual Lagos big boys barking orders. No, this one walked in slow, quiet, like he already owned the room without asking. Amara looked up to give her usual corporate smile, the one that never reached her eyes. But the moment her gaze locked onto his face, chai, her breath caught, her fingers froze over the keyboard. Those eyes, that jaw, where had she seen this man before? The managing director jumped up. Team, please welcome our principal partner, Mr. David Cole.
David shook hands round the table. When he reached Amara, he extended his hand. And the moment their palms touched, something warm passed through her fingers. David's eyes held her, just 1 second too long. He recognized her. Nobody else in that boardroom noticed. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Amara," he said, his voice deep and smooth like palm oil poured slow. "Likewise, Mr. Cole," she replied, giving nothing away. "Shall we begin?" The meeting continued as meetings do. But underneath the table, her hands would not stop shaking. Something old was knocking at a door she'd long since bricked up. The meeting stretched past noon. The executives filed out one by one, still arguing about where to eat. Because no matter what is happening in a Nigerian office, there will always be a serious debate about lunch. Amara lingered behind, sorting files she didn't need to sort.
She didn't notice David had stayed behind too, until she looked up and found him by the window, watching traffic crawl along the bridge. "You're not joining them for lunch, Mr. Cole." "In a moment," he said, and turned to face her. "I wanted to say something to you, privately." Her guard went up. "If it's about the timeline, my assistant can." "It's not about the project," he cut in. "I have actually seen you before. I don't recall your name on any client roster. 5 years ago,
St. Nicholas Hospital, he stated. Then his voice dropped low. I was near the emergency doors when your father came running through the corridor, screaming that his daughter had moved her hand. Amara froze. I saw them wheel you into intensive care that night.
The room tilted sideways. Standing in front of her in an expensive suit, this stranger just reminded her of the darkest night of her life. Her spine went stiff. She clutched her folder like a shield. Interesting coincidence, Mr. Cole. I should get back to my desk. She turned to leave. His voice caught her, gentler now. I'm not trying to unsettle you. I just didn't want to keep pretending I didn't recognize you. That felt like a worse thing to do to a woman who's built her whole life around not being seen. Amara said nothing. She simply walked out, heels striking the floor like small gunshots. David watched her go and let her have the exit. Over the following months, business reviews turned into casual lunches, and lunches turned into long conversations that slowly became a real friendship. Amara learned the man beneath the authority, a widower raising 2 children alone, speaking of them with no ego, no performance.
Unlike Daniel, who spoke only to command or correct, David listened. He never performed. One stormy Tuesday, heavy rain pounded Lagos for hours, flooding the streets around the office. Amara stood beneath the concrete canopy, watching her car parked near the entrance as water rose along the roadside. A black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. You're driving your sedan in this flood? The car can handle it, David. He smiled. Or your engine stalls on the bridge and you're stuck there till 3 a.m. Let me drop you home. Every instinct in her screamed, don't get in. Don't let him see where you live.
No, thank you, Amara responded. He didn't push, but just before pulling off, he paused. Can I ask you one question, just as a friend? What is it? Why do you always look like you are standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to run the moment someone steps too close? I don't do that. I'm simply maintaining boundaries. You do, Amara. I don't know what happened to you at that hospital 5 years ago, but I know what grief looks like. He held her eyes a long moment. I think you've convinced yourself that staying in pain is safer than risking hope. But hiding in a fortress doesn't mean you are alive. It just means you are safe from being found. The window rolled up. The SUV drove into the flooded street. Amara stood there, his words piercing straight through her walls. And for the first time in years, Amara felt something stir in her heart. She didn't know what it was, but whatever it was, it scared her.
She didn't know it yet, but the walls she'd spent 4 years building were already starting to crack. That night, alone in her flat, a text came from an unknown number. It's David. I got your number from the office directory. I hope that's okay. You don't have to answer, but I'll be here whenever you're ready to stop running. Amara stared at it a long time, her thumb hovering. Then another message came in, from a name she never expected to see again. Neke, her cousin. And just like that, the one person Amara had spent 4 years trying to forget had found her again. But why was Neke calling after all these years? What did she want? Was she coming back to apologize? Or was there something much more dangerous waiting for Amara? If you want to find out what happens next, make sure you come back for part 3 of Amara's story. And besties, if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share this story, and subscribe to African Folktales with Nsinem. I will see you in part 3.